Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are going to be talking this afternoon a little bit about how to be a balanced platform team. So, who are we? My name's Christopher Pittman. I am a product person. I do all kinds of things around sort of product and teaching it at VMware Pivotal Labs. My passion is helping very large organizations, enterprises in the federal government and the private sector work at the speed of very small teams and very small organizations. I want to help them, sort of identify critical risks in their product, deliver value quickly through continuous iteration. My current focus within Pivotal Labs is helping organizations sort of scale product practices across non-traditional, sort of more IT-oriented organizations that have platform teams in them. Taj.
My name is Taj Moore. My pronouns are he and him. I like to think of myself as a product management player coach. So I spend time doing the product management, and I also spend time on the side helping other people understand the position that they play and what they're supposed to be doing. I've been working with platforms for the last 13 years. Didn't know I would end up actually running platforms from an IT level. I happen to love it. I like to think that I help enterprise IT cloud platforms be a little more human every day.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samah, and I'm on the same team with all these fine folks, the VMware Pivotal Labs Platform Services team. I am also a product manager, and I found my way to product management through a journey in software engineering and software engineering education. I taught for Girls Who Code, and I ran my own software engineering fellowship in Detroit in order to reduce the race gaps in Detroit area tech.
Hi, everyone. I am Christie Lynam. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm a solutions architect on the platform services team at VMware Pivotal Labs as well. I'm a student of Agile XP and enjoy working with our enterprise customers to drive innovation, transformation, and business outcomes. Prior to joining VMware Pivotal Labs, I was teaching software engineering at a nonprofit coding school in Denver. Before that, I was a practicing criminal defense attorney for about 10 years. So that's who each of us are individually, but collectively, we are all part of VMware Pivotal Labs. So what do we do day to day? We help customers modernize their infrastructure, their applications, and their processes. We work closely with our customers to build a culture, mindset, and modern practices that go hand in hand with their digital transformation. We also work to instill best practices and agile processes while empowering teams to deliver products that their customers need. So how do we do these things? So first, through lean product management. So focusing on the complete life cycle of a product, understanding customer problems, how your product can solve them, and ensuring that the customer's needs are met. Second is agile development. So continuous delivery through iterations while constantly gathering feedback from our end users and evolving. Encouraging flexibility, adaptability, communication, and efficient and effective collaboration between individuals and teams. Third is user-centered design. So focusing on the users and their needs throughout each and every phase of the iterative design process to deliver an outstanding customer experience. And lastly, site reliability engineering. So automating processes, creating scalable, accessible, and highly reliable software systems. So now that you know a little bit about us, I'm going to pass it back to Christopher to give us a roadmap of where we're going today and an introduction into the balanced team methodology.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about balanced platform teams, let's first talk about balanced teams, and we'll talk about why platforms. We'll bring those two things together. And then from there, I think we want to give you some practical guidelines on how to start to apply this in your own organization, on your own platform teams. And then since we're all product people, we're going to give you some acceptance criteria. Like, how do we know that we are actually creating balanced platform teams? What does that look like, and how will we know we're successful? So let's start with balanced teams. And I want to give a quick shout out to Becky Hyde here, who I think is actually already in our Q&A Slack channel, or in our Slack channel. She did a talk last year at last year's Spring One platform conference and talked about balanced teams. And so a lot of this is going to go over the same territory much more quickly. And if you want to sort of dive deep onto it, I recommend that talk. So let's get started. sort of in the beginning of software, and this is sort of traditional Waterfall Systems V kind of organizations, we're going to build a big software program. We might start with users, and we will work with our users. We'll do research, hopefully. And in doing this research, we start to get a sense of like, okay, here is the problem that we are trying to solve out in the marketplace. And then from there, we might work our way into design. This might be architecture. We've used these terms here because it'll kind of help to start drawing us into the balanced team concept. You might have different names for this in a large enterprise, but design architecture starts to come up with, hey, what are the requirements here? What is this program, this project, this piece of software going to do? And then from there, it goes to some form of sort of product or program management, and we build up a business case, and we prioritize what's going to get built based on what are we trying to do from a business standpoint. This then goes to engineering. Engineering works on this from a spec. Maybe there's additional re-architecting. All of this takes a while, and then we're done building, and we ship it back to our users. Now, the problem inherent in this, and one that you've probably heard lots of times before, is that as you go through all of these sort of transitions through phases in your organization, and most notably through different teams in your organization, you're not releasing back to users. You're not sort of revalidating that the effort you're putting into building this product is worth it. And so over time, you are building up unvalidated effort from design to product management to engineering, and then often what is a very long phase as you actually build the product. Again, you're building up unvalidated effort. You're not sort of re-releasing and saying, were we right about the problem that we were trying to solve? Were we right about what our solution does and whether it solves that problem? And the solution gets bigger and it contains more and more assumptions about whether it will work and whether it's the right problem. And so in doing this over time, we ultimately release to users. But in that time, we've built up risk, which is sort of the area under this curve. And so we then say, well, let's localize all of this. Let's take fundamentally these roles and the perspectives that they bring, because this is necessary to build good software, but let's rearrange those pieces and let's localize them on a team. So product management asking, is this a viable solution? Are we solving a problem that's in the interest of the business? Design asking, is this a desirable solution? Are we solving this in a way that actually solves user pain that will be joyful for users to use? And then engineering asking, is this a feasible solution? Can we build this? Can we build this quickly? Can we build this in the least complex way possible? All of this brings together on the team, and the goal of sort of bringing these perspectives onto a small team is that they can move quickly and they can make these decisions, bring these perspectives, and they can iterate with users most critically. So a little bit different than our flow earlier, back through sort of the big organization. We now have a small team. They can talk together directly to their users, understand where the pains are, understand if the software is starting to solve those pains, and thus sort of iterate. Now, in large organizations, which is where we spend a lot of our time, especially in platform, this can run into some problems. So I've brought these roles, I've brought these perspectives onto a team, and they're supposed to be able to move fast. And yet, this team still needs to ask for help from infrastructure and get maybe a new compute instance stood up for example, and they have to wait on that. That's a ticketed process. Then they might need to have a networking change made to their product because of something they want to try with users. Then they might need security to approve it because we're making a change to production. Oh, we're making a change to production, so change management might need to review our change. And so all of this can slow you back down. And so you're in fact not on maybe the smaller risk curves that you'd like to be, where you're iterating frequently. You're back on that big risk curve, and you're building up unvalidated effort as you wait for the enterprise. So Taj, how do we solve this?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, infrastructure, well, that could be done as code. The networking, there's software to handle networking.
Nice.
And that software can have security built in. You can even automate a lot of that change management. So you can put people on Rails and take them through the gates and all the checks. Basically, what we're talking about is a platform. It has all these things built in. But platforms don't just happen, right? You can install some software. That doesn't mean you're done. It becomes a going concern, and you really need a team to run that platform. You need a dedicated crew of individuals who can ensure that it's taking care of all these things now and in the future. And to do that, you really need to run that platform as a product. Every product needs a balanced team. So that balanced platform team gets in there and is iterating with their customers that are the app developers who are then releasing to their end users. So let's talk about what that looks like. Over to Samah.
Thanks, Taj. So let's go back to the classic balance team that Christopher so expertly introduced. Here we have product management, design, and engineering represented. And we've been talking about these components of a balanced team in terms of their roles and their titles, but I want to challenge us to think about them less by roles and more in terms of what values they're representing in the end product. So the designer here is championing the values of desirability. Will this alleviate the end user's pain points through ease of use? They might ask questions when decisions are being made, like, will the user like this? Does it reduce their toil in their path to production? The engineers champion reliability and technical excellence in the product, and they could do this by advocating for technical strength of the product in meetings and when decisions are being made. The product manager asks a mix of questions, but one major value they keep in mind is business value. But these aren't the only three perspectives that exist. There are other qualities and values you might want to embody in your product that you'll want to be represented by your balanced team. So this brings us to the thought that if a successful balanced team is a team that's able to holistically advocate for all successful aspects of a product, then the makeup of your balanced team is dependent on what you identify as the most critical values of that product. So as a thought experiment, you can begin to brainstorm, what does a successful product look like to you and to your team? And this could be changing over time. It's not necessarily a static list of values. Is it secure? Is it easy to use and understand? Perhaps it's about eliminating pain points for the end user. Or maybe stability and continual improvement is more important to be represented in your end product. Or continuous support. And maybe even legal compliance might come into play. So back to the base balanced platform team, based on whatever values are important to champion in the product, you might end up with bringing in new roles or new perspectives. So maybe if a value that's important for your end product to champion is security, then maybe there's space for an InfoSec role. And maybe if reliability and stability is important, maybe someone takes on a part-time role as a subject matter expert on a site reliability engineering, SRE. Or maybe you decide as a team that instead of one person taking on this responsibility, it's shared as a practice across a team. So it might not be an individual representing one role. It could be a mixture of roles that someone brings the perspectives of, or a shared practice across the team. There might be space for bringing in part-time as a lawyer if there's legal compliance issues. And again, this could just be bringing in experience. So on our panel, we have Christie here, who was a lawyer in the past. She would bring in a perspective that is able to advocate for the legal aspects of the product. And as you keep on going through whatever values you've determined are very important to be in your end product, you might see other roles come into play, like infrastructure, for example. So as you go back to your work environment, try this thought experiment. Think about what values you or your collective team finds important in your product and reflect on whether or not you have sufficient representation of those values within your team currently. This might get you started on recognizing what perspectives are missing from your team as you work towards balance. But that being said, that's not the only way to move along the journey of balancing your team. There are many ways to uncover what perspectives need to be represented, and it might even be born out of pain and toil in your weekly iterations, or maybe you have a new feature being developed that makes it quite obvious that there's a perspective missing. So Christopher is going to talk to us a little bit more about the various tactics you can employ in your team to introduce balance. But before that, Taj is going to share a philosophy that's helpful to keep in mind as you go through this journey.
True north is a direction, not a destination. So this is a thought that I arrived at when I was listening to a radio show. It was, I think it was NPR. It was a recording of a woman walking to the North Pole. She had done it before, but this time she was recording it for the radio. And you can hear her, you can hear the snow crunching underfoot as she's walking along. You can hear the ice cracking. She's getting a little nervous because, it's been warmer there lately. The ice has been thinner. She's asking, why am I doing this? But I want to do it again. So she's walking along, and then there's silence. She says, there it is, 90 degrees north, 0 degrees east. I'm at the North Pole. And then crunch, crunch, crunch. There's some more crunching, and she's explaining that, well, the North Pole is over water, so this ice is moving. So I was at the North Pole, but now I'm not. I have to walk over a little bit. Oh, there it is again. There it is again. So even when you get there, you can't stand still. It's the moment you're at true north, you actually lose your bearings. You know, there is no more north. Time doesn't mean anything. There are no time zones at the North Pole. So if you really want to know what direction you're heading, you're better off not actually saying you've arrived. You're always moving toward true north.
So how do you start moving in that direction? Let's get tactical for a second here. If you have a team, you have a platform team, and they are working against clear outcomes, I'm going to assume that. Let's start with some things you can do to start to pursue balance on your team. So as you go about working towards those outcomes, as your team is working day in, day out, one great thing you can do to identify the need for a new perspective on your team is to document toil. Look at what it takes to work through a given process. Maybe it's something you have to do repeatedly, or maybe it's lead time that sort of exists outside of your team. That's a great thing to look for in how you work. And so occasionally looking back and saying, hey, where were we spending a lot of time waiting on somebody else? Where were we spending time where we should probably do this work, but we just don't seem to understand this thing well enough and we were getting stuck? This is a great way to start recognizing the need for balance or an additional perspective. Let me give you another one that's really important to me and to all of us here. If you are not already doing a retro with your team, probably every week, probably at a minimum saying, hey, this was bad, this was good, and this is something I'm still wondering about, I recommend starting with that. Like, it is just such an important thing to do on your team, and it will help you to surface whether there is important perspective that you're missing. If there are questions that your team repeatedly has to answer, you may need someone who knows that stuff and can help you answer it, and they may need to be part of your team. Another way to do this is demos. If you are, especially in platform world, we're pushing out changes to our platform, but when we go and actually demo, hey, here's something that we've been working on, maybe here's what we're planning to do with it in the future, you'll get back voices from your stakeholders, and those voices may be valuable inputs to how your product works, how it functions, and can sort of inform how are we going to build this. And so that's maybe another place to surface perspectives you might want to bring onto the team. Let's talk about what bringing onto the team looks like. There's lots of different ways to do this. And I think this is really based around your roadmap and what you're trying to do as a team. So if you look at your product and you say, we are almost always going to be having to think about security at the level almost of technical feasibility and of sort of business value, then it's probably worth considering adding a person with background in security to your team. Now, if on the other hand, you say, well, hey, the next outcome in our roadmap is going to involve a lot of infrastructure work, but maybe beyond that, we won't need that as much. You might see if you can get someone from the infrastructure organization on a rotation to work with you. Again, this is all just sort of rooted in the outcomes of your team and what you're trying to do. And you might even look at pairing, especially if, hey, we have a quick thing, we got blocked on something, trying to work through something, and we're just kind of going back and forth in meetings. That's a great opportunity to just bring someone in to pair with you on that story who represents that other perspective. So beyond that, one thing I want to add here as a note is that it's not always adding people to teams. Sometimes it is saying, hey, maybe this team needs to shift its makeup, and some of the people who are on this team aren't the right fit for this kind of work. Either way, you need to consider the psychological safety of the people on your team. And so let's say we're adding a new person or someone's coming on to pair or rotate for a while. Does that person have a chance to get enough context on the product? Do you have teaming agreements on how you like to work together as a team? Can you bring that person into those and remake those agreements to be inclusive of how they want to work on a team? That's really important, because the more you are able to do that and people are able to feel safe joining your team, the more effectively you'll be able to function as a balanced team on that next set of outcomes. This also applies, as I said, for people who might say, hey, we've been working on this thing for a while. Maybe I came over from infrastructure I was going to be a more permanent member, but as we're working, I'm just not doing a lot of things that are kind of rooted in the thing that I like doing best, infrastructure. And so I think I can go back home, or maybe I can go help this other team. This is my challenge to leaders who might be on this call. If you lead a platform organization, and that's where I spend some of my time pairing with clients, consider for yourself, have I created an environment that is safe for people on a team to be able to say, hey, I may not be the best fit for this type of work right now. I think I can use my skills elsewhere, or I think I can use my skills back in our infrastructure organization. I think that it's really important not only that teams sort of take on, hey, how do we make each other feel safe as we sort of bring on people for a while or as people leave, but also has the organization made it safe to do that. It's a really critical part of making balanced teams, and especially balanced platform teams, work well, because their needs will change. And that leads to the last thing. As those needs change, it's really important that you reevaluate together. If your organizational leadership, make sure that your teams are talking about this, thinking about this, make sure you're engaged with them about it. And if you're on a team, we mentioned retroing, documenting your work, how you work and your lead times, et cetera. Be sure that this is part of your continuous conversation and that it's safe to do that. Ultimately, if you're reevaluating, you'll sort of be able to say, oh, wait, I'm not standing on the North Pole anymore. I need to move over here.
So how do you know your team is balanced? So as Christopher, Samah, and Taj all mentioned, it's really important to recognize that this is a moving target. And what may balance your team today is likely going to change over time, and you have to be willing to adapt and evolve to find new balance. However, we've come up with a list that is by no means exhaustive of some common themes that we tend to see in balanced teams. And they're all a bit intertwined with one another. So the first theme that I want to touch on is multidiscipline collaboration. So this means you have a diverse team with a variety of different skill sets and perspectives being represented. Being able to collaborate and pair across disciplines is going to reduce blind spots in your platform. When you have this kind of collaboration, knowledge silos are broken down and knowledge is shared freely among all individuals on the team. So, and you may notice that when everyone's present for this context sharing, it's likely going to result in less meetings, which is always a good thing. So, and that brings me to the next thing, because these first two are really closely related. Those knowledge silos only get broken down when there's a healthy dose of trust on the team. So we believe this is the most important value of a balanced team. If you don't have trust, everything else is going to break down. It's literally the foundation of any successful team, especially when you have people collaborating across disciplines. You have to be able to trust in your team that they're not only capable within their domain, but also capable of making informed decisions for the team. And we know that this can be difficult in the beginning, and that's why it's so important for any balanced team to constantly revisit this value and iterate when necessary. There should be a sense of shared leadership where no single person is the owner of the platform or in charge. Everyone is on equal footing and feels psychologically safe, speaking their own truth, and supports each other towards a shared goal. And then as a result of more trust, there's likely less friction. So team morale is increased. You might be experiencing a higher quality of interpersonal interactions. The team is happier and having fun. Sharing that equal weight can eliminate some of those internal conflicts that might arise between different disciplines. Next, things go faster. So this can be decreased cycle time. Decisions can be made quickly, and the team is working in an iterative fashion and able to deliver features faster with confidence. Maybe it's requests that used to take weeks, now only take hours because you have the right combination of people working together. This next one is really important. The team feels empowered and accountable. So your team is autonomous and empowered to make decisions with minimal oversight. Everyone on the team takes equal responsibility and accountability for the product, which in our case is the platform. Decisions are made by the team with the user's needs in mind, and those decisions are implemented without the need for process or outside influence. So here, it's really important to recognize that there's a difference between being permitted to make those decisions and actually being able to implement those decisions. So a balanced team needs both, the permission as well as the skill set to be able to deliver. So we're reminded again of the importance of that multidiscipline collaboration. And lastly, improve metrics. I mentioned decreased cycle time earlier when we were talking about things going faster. It could be that this is increased user satisfaction or increased user adoption. This could also come in the form of ratings from team surveys, otherwise known as like the happiness metric. These surveys can be a great indication that you're working on the right things and you have a balanced backlog of work. If your team is finding themselves constantly working on interrupt tickets and technical debt, and not delivering new features that are bringing value to the customer, you can bet that team morale is going to suffer. So making sure that you're balancing priorities in the backlog is super important to keeping the team inspired and motivated. But as I said before, this is not an exhaustive list, and your list may look different. Every team is going to have different needs, and those needs are no doubt going to change over time. The most important thing is that you just recognize and acknowledge that it's an evolving process and be open to change. So in closing, we just want to challenge you to start by picking one of those tactics that Christopher mentioned earlier and implementing it within your organization so that you are one step closer to creating that balanced platform team. We are out of time, so thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be hanging out in a separate Zoom meeting for a bit to answer any questions you have. I believe there's a link to that in Slack. And we'd also love to hear your experiences around creating and finding balance on your teams. So thank you.